You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket, where unheard issues get brought to light and every perspective counts. Here are your hosts, Rebecca Pearson and Aniko Renee.
Good evening. Sunday night in Lincoln, 7:03 by the studio clock. It's dark. It's winter, but it's warm in Lincoln. How about that, Jake? Is it 60 degrees or something? Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Were you wearing shorts? I didn't notice. Are you one of them?
Yesterday.
Okay.
I can't do it for too long, but I did yesterday.
True Nebraskan wearing shorts at pretty much any temperature. So, but today was actually almost shorts day. Not for me, but for most people. So, pretty good. How's it going in Maryland, Aniko? Is it warm there?
As they say, what's cooler than being cool? Ice cold. That's our situation over here.
Is it minus degrees or just 10 degrees? How cold is it?
Where I live, with the wind chill coming off the water, it feels that way, but we're only in about the 20s, so I'm sure that's borderline beach weather for you all. So
I don't know. I think it's pretty cold here too when the wind's blowing. But anyway, it has been a lovely day. Fun to be back after the holiday. We were not here last week, but we had one of our previous shows on. So if you're new to Walk the Herd, this is Aniko and Rebecca at 93.7 The Ticket. Thanks for joining us this evening. A little bit about Walk the Herd, if you're new to this show, is we're talking about unheard perspectives. And the show is intended to share something maybe you haven't heard before, and where every perspective counts, no matter what. So we're not here to change your opinion, but we might be giving you some provocative things to think about. And tonight we're going to talk about women in sports. And that's a huge topic. As I was doing some research, maybe we'll do this multiple times over the course of the year. You know, we've been going at this for a few months now, but it feels right to be talking about what's happening with women in sports and women's sports in general, because it's year end. You're always looking backwards and reflecting and looking at the year forward. So what comes to mind when you think of 2025 or 2026, Aniko, and women in sports?
it's been a monumental year between the deals that college athletes have made, the progress and stances that pro athletes have made. We're putting our foot down and it's staying down. So for 2026, I only look for more up. That's the goal myself. More joy, more up, more out. Why not be seen? Why not be heard? You know?
It's kind of fun to talk about, and I've got a couple of different things in my head to engage folks with today. So if you want to participate, you're always welcome to call in at 402-464-5685. You can drop us a chat at that number, or you can drop a chat in the YouTube if you're watching us. We're also on social media. We're on channel 961 with Allo, and all of these are recorded. So if you want to share this with someone to participate, we will always try to answer your questions, even if we don't get to it this week. So yeah, I guess the main thing we can start with, we just had Kaylee Denker in the studio, so we can talk about women's basketball. And the Huskers played this afternoon. Looks like they beat Purdue, so good for them. They had a great start in 2025 at 12-0 and still going strong. And our volleyball team, if we want to talk about women's sports with us, the volleyball team 30-0 in the Big Ten champions, and then unfortunately lost to A&M, but A&M won the whole thing. So, kind of makes sense. They were unbelievable. But, shout out to our women's sports teams. And then we have bowling here that's very strong in Nebraska. I'm trying to think what else we got. Gymnastics, women's sports, very strong here in Nebraska. What am I forgetting, Jake? Anybody?
Soccer.
Yeah, soccer. Yep. And soccer.
We're big on field hockey and lacrosse here.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, as I was doing research, I'm blown away. Yes, we're in the sports business, but, I leave a lot of the sports to Derek, to DP, and I don't tend to get involved in some of the details. But as I was looking at, this topic and thinking how important it is, it's becoming even more obvious to me how important it is to a lot of things when you look at how women's sports is evolving. And some of this is important to me just because when women aren't participating in sports, there's a whole bunch of knock-on impacts that affects them that men have had for a long time. So when we look at some of these, what we would call systemic bias or reasons that things exist here in the United States or around the world, it's not that hard actually to tie a lot of that back to sports. That kind of surprised me. I was going back to ancient Greece to look at some things. So, what do you think of when you think of women in sports, Aniko? Just because we're two different generations. So, what do you think of?
My first thought when you brought it up was my favorite, Robin Roberts. I love Robin Roberts. She has always been on. I mean, she started in ESPN in 1990, so I wasn't born yet. But so she's always been on my screen, And then I also think of Carrie Champion, who used to moderate ESPN's First Take. I watched a lot of that when I was pregnant, circa 2014. And just fell in love with her power, her perspective, and like how the narrative can change in a debate when a woman of color is present in sports.
How so? What do you take away from that when you make that comment? Can you give an example or an idea?
Definitely. Just because there's progress doesn't mean there's not an imbalance in authority necessarily. So in mainstream broadcasting, there's a lot of those traditional institutions of like checks and balances on how far you can get, which I believe is why a lot of people are going digital now, but like YouTube and Patreon and things like that to control it. But without a hidden perspective, you miss a hidden audience. So by bringing, credibility and redefining relationships for the majority of the athletic population, which is people of color right now, for a large spectrum of teams and sports, without that perspective or that narrative or the understanding culturally, you miss out on a lot of who someone is, why someone is, and where it comes from.
So do you, when you're watching folks that have a different background, can you see them bringing that different perspective to the conversation?
I can see it. I can hear it. I think Stuart Scott, who's not a woman, but Carrie was in his documentary Booyah recently. She came up. Yeah. So it was noted there too. But when you're hearing your own vernacular, when you're hearing like the sauce, the spirit, it's undeniable that you're included now. So it's like, of course, I will stay and watch this. I will hear what you're saying. Everyone's getting a fair shot of like, hey, this person is ground their way up from the bottom, was hungry for a lot of their teen years before athletes could get paid for what they do. It brings a more complex understanding that's necessary to get the whole picture.
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot about just people of color in general because it's foundational to sports in so many ways. When you were just talking about that Robin Roberts, for example, and you hadn't been born yet, I'm of the generation where when women on the sidelines started to be a possibility, and gosh, I'm going to draw a total blank to the first woman. She was amazing, but all the debate was they can't go in the locker room. Understand that.
Yeah, you had Mary Garber, Jeannie Morris, one of them, perhaps.
Yeah, it wasn't even. Maybe it was one of them. It's not the name I was thinking of. But just I was watching the Bears and the Lions before coming here, and it was Erin Andrews, who's old. She's OG now, really. Erin, one of the early women on the sidelines. But I just remembered the drama of people even wanting women on the sidelines for football, and they can't go in the locker room, and what are we going to do about that? And then all the jokes about that, at different times for sure. But think about, I think about this from a corporate perspective, but what did the early women that broke through, right? Whether it was Carrie or Erin or any of the folks that you mentioned, what must that have been like to, be in a man's world in sports?
I think we kind of experience that a little bit every day. Everything's kind of designed that way. I think people forget women couldn't have their own checking accounts until I believe the mid 70s, I think. Is that correct? So the power has always been there, the narrative, the authority. And as much as it's great that we have women on the sidelines and work their way up, there's still a lack of women in the boardroom as lead anchor. It's still not quite there yet. So women are still, fist to pavement, frustration, I'm sure ignoring little microaggressions or belittlement, having to be overly confident, I would assume, you are great in a boardroom full of men, you have the stamina, the courage, the know-how. that's something unique that they had to have for sure.
There's a fabulous book about ESPN in the early days. I've never been able to locate it again, but I remember reading it cover to cover in like a day and a half, and it was huge. It must have been 2 inches thick, and I've never been able to find the book again, or haven't been able to convince myself the book that's out there that's about ESPN that's that thick is the book that I read. But it was unbelievable. Of course, we talk about ESPN because we're in sports and they're the flagship, even though the networks have certainly come around. ESPN had a major, major impact on sports in this country, for just college sports, high school sports. I mean, you name it, and the media and money behind it, everything, right? And this book was unbelievable in describing, the challenges that they had, and not all of that was good. But they've come out on the other side, right? And they've been so significant. But the women in that environment, and in pretty much many other business environments where in the United States, all of that was male dominated, the women at least felt like they had to be 3 and 4 times as good at their job in order to be considered. And I think that's still a dialogue even today, don't you think?
Absolutely. It plays and shows itself in, I think, all careers.
Mm-hmm.
I think even in terms of mom guilt, if you're a working mom, you have to make sure that you are in the PTA, attending all the functions, as well as getting that brief done by 8 p.m. to do bath and bedtime, and then not be tired in the morning, not have spit up on your shirt. Like it doesn't really stop,
Right. The whole super mom thing, right? You've got to be doing it all. And here's the question, because you're a super mom. Where does that impression come from in our environment? So, whether it's in sports or in work or at home, the PTA or whatever, where do we think that impression that we have to be so much better comes from in order to succeed when you're not the norm?
The best way I can describe it is, as a biracial person, the way that I sought out a lot of African American history, so that if someone were to question me, I had something to stand on. I had fact, I had knowledge. I think it's the same type of thing. Like, you're trying to demonstrate masculine traits, such as, that have been defined as hard work, grinding, being tough, being straightforward. I think we're trying to kind of fight. You don't want anybody to question your feminine qualities that you have, the softness, the emotionability, even though I think men are quite emotional too sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah. But I think it's just like trying to push back on what is expected of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say from my perspective in the corporate world, which is probably where I noticed it the most, and yet sometimes I didn't notice it at all, but I think it is trying to fit in. And, that goes back to just, we all want to fit in. We all want to be accepted. And if the norm is the norm, whatever it is, the majority of anything, you're trying to fit in that norm, whether you're doing that consciously or not. And so being different, whether you look different, sound different, are different, know something different, right? You stand out. And if you're trying to fit in, I think sometimes, again, it's not even always conscious that you're trying to fit in, but you're working harder to fit in, especially if that's not where you came from, for example, right?
And how do you get the same opportunities if you're not completing the same tasks in the same way with the same mindset? How are you seen as equal?
Right. And there is so much unconscious bias of when someone new comes in that's different for whatever reason. Again, look different, sound different, act different, whatever it is. They're the norm, the majority are not used to seeing that. And so they don't know how to evaluate that. Again, a lot of this is unconscious or subconscious. Somebody's doing something differently. They may be achieving the same objective, but doing it differently. And that becomes hard for people to fit into the system that they're used to. And so you get this kind of undercurrent of, we do things the way we've always done it because it's familiar, right? And, this is a whole topic in and of itself. But when you think about women in sports, and you mentioned this, just being a mom and, being able to have children, fascinating when I was looking back at the history of women's sports, and I only started, after Jesus was gone. So I started it started year zero, right? To look at history. And it's very logical that you go back to ancient times in Greece and Rome and places like that. But of course, Greece is the home of the Olympics, and looking at what is out there in the history books, I guess, on women competing in sports, is they did compete. This was interesting to me in Sparta, right? I say Sparta, and hopefully everybody thinks armor and fights and Russell Crowe and whatever else you might think of. And we'll get to wrestling here in a minute because I think it's interesting. But it mentions that girls trained in running and wrestling and throwing, and of course track and field. And when you think of some of the early sports that women were participated in, those were some of them, but I would have never thought of wrestling. So here I think, wrestling is relatively new, whether it's, UFC, which is a form of that, or Nebraska, which has an incredible women's wrestling, like the state has an incredible pipeline of women in wrestling, or WWE, which is Jake's favorite thing to talk about, I think, outside of maybe Husker sports, right? So you've got women in wrestling. Well, it went back to the ancient Greek days, but I guess some of the history is in the differences of men trying to protect women from a reproductive, like the women were the only ones who could have babies. So the whole conversation around sports was more about protecting women, whereas the men grew up in sports more from a military and protecting their cities and things like that. So when you look at where that can start, it seems logical that maybe things evolved the way that they did. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me, but I think those in power often do things to keep them in said position because it's scary, and our, Darwinism prevents us from wanting to be the weaker link, no matter what that looks like.
Right.
So I'm sure, it goes back further, like cavemen, who can bring in the biggest kill, like that guy's getting the hottest lady in the village, Well,
so back to money and power, I think, right? And
yeah.
that's what's happening today is very interesting.
Yeah, and when you have the majority inability to document, to read, to write, to conduct business, to, promote and create print, that story and that narrative is going to lean that way. So I'm sure there always have been many women who, Joan of Arc is the first one I think of. So many, Harriet Tubman, women that fought the grain, and only a select few get that outstanding narrative. But behind every strong man, they say, is a stronger woman. So at least that's what we say. So
I'm just curious. I was like, well, why is it? This has bothered me for a long time. I've in the corporate world, I was involved in marketing and motorsports and basketball, mostly in that world. But it used to drive me crazy. It's like, why isn't women's sports more popular? Why? And that's me asking 100 questions, as I always do, about why anything's happening. So to go back and look at kind of historically how we've evolved, it makes some sense to me that men's sports got a leg up sooner if it's evolving from the military and, really truly a physical difference that evolved. Right. And then if you are protecting the women who are then growing the population, again, for protecting the city, right? There's just a lot in there. So that makes sense. But then over time, as civilization evolved and things came along to make it more possible for women to compete, they've always been competing, but there's been quite some ups and downs, from track and field to wrestling to just, throwing, shot putting, all kinds of things like that women did, to getting into golf and, all the other sports, swimming, diving, tennis, there's a whole bunch of things that women's sports has evolved to. And now, if you look at 25 and 26, right, we started this conversation of looking at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, there is a step change going on in women's sports from revenue generation perspective at the college level for NIL. There's a lot going on that's driving money into the hands of women.
Definitely. You have the Caitlin Clarks. We were talking about Asia. You have Flo. There's so many women who I don't think it's even necessarily an issue of popularity anymore. There's so much attention on it. I think my question becomes, why is there such a fear to, provide them with the best training facilities, playable, arenas, all the same training equipment? That would be that's more of my question. Like, what's the fear in empowering women at this point?
Some of the perspective that I was reading about, so as you put more money in the hands of women through sports and competition and media and brands, whether it's NIL or whether you're pro athletes, NIL, which is more referred to as branding or marketing in that respect, you're changing the dynamic of what they have access to. And some of the perspectives I was reading about is that, and this is true, oh my gosh, this is so true in the corporation, women in women's sports have to prove the ROI, whereas men's sports are allowed, and there's examples out there, we're not going to have time to go into them, but men's sports are allowed to be terrible for a long time and, get justified one more year, to try to make it profitable or something, and the world revolves around money. More than anything, and money leads to power, right? I mean, that's
So
what it is.
sounds kind of like they're worried that if women get power, there will be more women in said boardrooms to say, hey, you guys kind of have a really bad record for a really long time. Now it's time for you to prove something.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to be bullied, essentially. They want to be the bully. So
Well, and it's, I live this, and we had training in the corporate world, and I just associate it because I think there's a lot of commonality in there, because in general, it's just the majority population seeing, what they've historically been accustomed to being a minority, just being different from them. And that just changes the world they know, right? Again, I think most people are good minded and they are interested in doing the right thing, and none of this is negative in my mind. It's just simply the reality. When things come along and change your status quo, that's uncomfortable. So if, let's just say, women come in and they think differently, same with the sports, like there's some interesting things going on in women's sports, like Athletes Unlimited, which is kind of a new model for how women's sports leagues are operating. They're changing the way things have been, and change is sometimes hard.
change is hard, and different is scary. Different isn't wrong, but it's scary. And fear is such an overwhelming emotion, and it manifests in ways that we don't even really grasp in our day to day. I'm still learning that myself. Whether it's even fear of success, that can even be one. Like, what if you do better by supporting more women's organizations in your state and bring in more revenue? Like, then what? Then what do you say?
Right. And then there's, I think really, and we're going to take a break here, but one of the things that we could talk about is just, be careful what you wish for. The men, I'm going to say the men historically have been carrying the responsibility, the breadwinning, there's a lot that goes with that. Some guys are happy to let that go. Like, yeah, knock yourself out. Like, that's a lot of work, and it is kind of scary. And then, you got to be careful what you wish for, because then you get, whatever comes with that as well. So let's take a break and we'll come back. We'll talk about women in sports. This is Aniko and Rebecca with Walk the Herd. We'll be right back.
Want to make the easy call? Call John Henry's. From leaky pipes to a broken AC, flickering lights to furnace fights, even drains and duct cleaning, we've got it handled. Plumbing, heating, air, and electrical, all under one trusted roof. Proudly serving homes across Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas, and ready 24/7. Visit calljh.com or call John Henry's.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air,
and electrical.
Graham Tire presents life's greatest adventures.
Okay, take the worm, put it on the hook. Now bring your pole back and throw it forward. And just let the fish come to you.
I got a bite! It's a big one, Dad!
Great road trips start with great service. Graham Tire, your tire store next door, with 5 convenient Lincoln locations, getting you to the places that matter most.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
MWR, a local company of Lincoln, is proud to announce they are able to offer their own post-frame building packages in metal to anyone desiring a building, whether you're a contractor or a DIYer. They can install your building as always, and they offer multiple different rib profiles and loads of color options, including the wood grain metal at great competitive prices. You can inquire at mwrbuildingandfence.com or just draw your desired building and submit it in their contact us page, and they'll get back to you. Call MWR today at 402-540-8966.
Back Nine Golf in South Lincoln is the premier indoor golf experience in the state. The weather in the winter months is cold, windy, and as unpredictable as a tee shot on the 450-yard par 4. With top-of-the-line full-swing simulators and a PGA teaching professional, Back Nine Golf is there to help you improve your game and lower your score. Back Nine Golf is open to the public with 24/7 access for members. Learn about Back Nine's variety of memberships today and see the facility for yourself at 7501 South 15th Street in Lincoln, just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Back Nine Golf, your premier indoor golf and events destination.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals just like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
Big box stores are tempting for buying equipment for your high schooler in sports or for yourself in your sports leisures. But buying new is awfully expensive. Why not go somewhere with new and used options? Play It Again Sports has quality, slightly to gently used equipment, and 50% of their inventory is actually new equipment. And it's more than baseball, softball, and golf. They also have equipment for disc golf, fitness, hockey, and more. Plus, they're always buying products. Bring your gear you're done with and get trade money on the spot. Play It Again Sports at 48th and Vine. Select Plumbing and Utility has been serving Lincoln and the surrounding area for 14 years, and they're not slowing down. Select Plumbing and Utility handles all your plumbing needs, from faucets and water heaters to full renovations, and they can even help with your heating and cooling needs. They're also Lincoln's underground experts, repairing and replacing broken underground water and sewer lines since day one. Contact Select Plumbing and Utility today at 402-560-6197, assuring excellence in every situation, opportunity, and challenge. That's 402-560-6197.
Tune in to 93.7 The Ticket immediately after every Nebraska men's basketball game for 1 hour of post-game recap. The Nebraska Basketball Postgame Show is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical, and the Lincoln Airport on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Are you looking for an exciting new way to put your skills to work? Explore new career options in the fintech industry at Currency, a Sandhills Global company. We offer full-time positions in financial sales, compliance, operations, and other fields. We also offer a 4.5-day work week, an attractive benefits package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
Welcome back to Walk the Herd. It's Aniko and Rebecca, Sunday night. And we're having a great conversation about women in sports and a whole bunch of implications of that and similarities into the work environment. And Aniko, I said something right before the break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. I have no idea what it was. Do you remember what I said?
I believe it was about what are the consequences of essentially getting what you've asked for, being like, be careful what you wish for.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
you know, is tenure equal to equity, essentially?
Right.
And
Right.
what do you do with that responsibility and proof of or lack of proof of success or failure?
Right. And I think, you know, I've heard this argument over the years, certainly because I'm old, in the early days of women starting to make inroads in the work environment. You know, I would hear guys say, yeah, go ahead, take over. I'm happy to stay at home and watch the kids. And then when they had to stay home and watch the kids, they're like, yeah, this sucks, so I don't want to do that. Like, my wife's a hero because she stayed home, watch the kids. So, It is one of these things that, I'm grateful to see over the years. Equality has definitely evolved. We're way better than we were then. But as we get some of these great deals, right? So I was watching an interview with Asia Wilson prepping for today's show, watching a little bit about Nigeri Kennedy, who is a pitcher for Texas Tech and softball. Amazing. She is the first one in the softball arena to get $1 million NIL deal. A woman of color, Asia is as well. These are pretty stellar things, and they know what I think they feel is their responsibility to do, right, to make a difference and pave the way for other women. And that comes with a lot of responsibility that maybe the dudes didn't have coming along the way. How do you think about that?
I think that that's true. We've kind of been used to holding down and playing both roles. So holding down the fort essentially and having to do both because we didn't really have the option. But I think the great thing about those women is the representation. Representation isn't just about presence, it's about respect and authority. So not only are there other young women out there able to look and see like this is in fact a possibility, a large possibility for me to have, to attain, to aspire to, but also when you're doing deals like that this young, it's only up from there in terms of brand deals, in terms of the authority again in these boardrooms, in owning your own companies to then make way for more women.
Right. And, I think when women or anybody, now it could just be any athlete that is not the norm, right? Anybody who's different makes it, whatever that is, they become a role model for someone. You think about how many people are looking at these athletes and saying, well, if they can do it, maybe I can too. And again, a lot of that is subtle. If you're not used to seeing tall women being successful in sports, you've got basketball and volleyball that certainly allow that difference. That didn't exist 30 years ago, right? The opportunities for tall women to do anything was not very favorable. And then you've got these two fantastic outlets for sports, and certainly some swimmers are quite tall as well, right? And then you've got people of color that everybody's looking at you and saying, okay, if this person can do it, so can I, right? And their stories are really meaningful. And that's what we talk about a lot in the work world as well, is just seeing other people that act like you, look like you, any kind of connection. Again, it could be gender, it could be ethnic background, it could be style. There's lots of things, but having more role models to help people who are different from the norm know that it's possible, it's huge. It's a big deal.
Definitely. And diversity only makes things better. Inclusion only makes things better. We're only cheating ourselves and not seeing the full potential of any field, subject, practice, sport if we're not open to everyone, because someone is going to bring something so different that it changes the game. Whether the scoreboard is even or not right now, it changes the game later.
Yeah. Well, what I think is really cool is that, the money is starting to follow this. So if you look at, and we talked about this when Mandy Monson was on, probably a month ago, and I was asking her questions about what do you learn as just a woman in sports that the men have been learning for thousands of years, frankly. What are the skills that you learn? And we were talking about leadership and teamwork and how to deal with pressure. And pick yourself back up and go out for the next play or call or whatever, right? These are things that you learn maybe more quickly and sooner in the sports world than you do in the work environment. And now the money is starting to follow that. So now what I look at, and this is what makes me think about how important sports is today that maybe I didn't appreciate prior to tonight, to be honest, is how many women can be developed equally to men because the sports opportunities are there and the money is there, so that by the time they get into a post-athletic career, which most of them will not have a professional career, men or women, they're going into the work world. And now you're getting someone who is further developed and more able to assimilate into a work environment because they've had that same experience. And to me, that's huge because that then helps the issues on the work side where men have also dominated. Sports is huge. It's a huge enabler.
Definitely, because there can be the sense of, with diversity, there can be the sense of there can only be one of us, or not sticking together essentially. And it's like every man or woman for themselves, because if I don't look out for me, there's not a higher structure to built to look out for me. So I think absolutely the athleticism and leadership and teamwork plays a huge part in breaking ground.
Mhm. Well, and now think about the money. If you are fortunate enough to be a collegiate athlete, getting some decent money through NIL, and we know there's still men and women, right? There's still only a small percentage of men or women getting significant money from their collegiate athletics. But then if you are able to go pro, the money has not been commensurate in the pro women's sports either to the men's. And, that's a lot of what's happening in women's basketball, in softball, soccer, right? Any of these places where you kind of have an equivalent, nothing compares to football. Even though there is women's football, it's going to be a while before I think it's going to be able to compete with American football, never mind, soccer on a worldwide basis when it comes to equal pay. But imagine that you're now having women athletes come out and eventually, hopefully, we're closing that gap to have as much money as the men. What do women do with their money? This is something I also studied and did a lot with women-owned businesses, so I can talk to this. But when you think about it, if you're giving women millions of dollars for their job and as an athlete, what are they doing with that money?
I can't speak for every woman, of course, but I think we talk about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs on this show often. And when you're able to eat, when you're able to provide for your family, when you're allowed to establish generational wealth, you become able to be fulfilled. And a fulfilled person makes for a great partner, a great worker, a great investor, a great business person. Like, I think the possibilities aren't as scary as the thought of what they will do with it. I think it's more so like, wow, what does a fulfilled person and taken care of person and non-traumatized or hungry person have the ability to do with their passions, with what they believe in and who they support?
And I think that's a great way also to think about the more traditional roles. So now I can say of men being the breadwinner and women being the stay-at-home mom, right? A super stereotypical traditional comment. But in my corporate world, I saw lots of women being the breadwinners and the dads being the stay-at-home dads. I mean, a lot, especially given that I was in the corporate world of historical male dominated, right? Like the epitome of male domination. And it was very prominent and very cool, right? And you had all these men who are now the stay at home mom, so to speak, or the stay at home parent. And I think as you see athletics and women in athletics do more of that, you might have even more evolution of that. And again, this is more about having even for the kids, right, to have a different kind of an experience than maybe they would have traditionally, and have more access to both parents or at least one parent. I don't know. It's interesting to me to see how that might affect us over time. What do you?
Definitely, because I don't really know anyone my age. Well, I shouldn't say anyone, but I don't know very many people my age who have the experience of like playing catch with dad, because it is so predominant. Well, was while I was growing up for men to be working. They didn't really get the opportunity to have leisure. They're so tired from working or holding it down, but also they didn't get the opportunity to develop the softness and emotional intelligence all the time, not all, but some, to be able to handle the, not the rearing, but the raising on their own. Like, I fully believe men are capable of that. Single dads are great and do in fact exist, but I think it's been a fight for them while trying to maintain society's expectations of what a man is. So I think it's just more expectations we're blasting and getting rid of and opening more doors.
Yeah. total paradigm buster. Is I want to talk about wrestling now because it's something that Jake has a purview on when we talk about at least WWE, but wrestling in general. But some of the sports now that are becoming really the up and coming sports, like if I can give a nod and say, okay, women's basketball, soccer, and volleyball, they're rolling. I mean, they're nowhere near where they need to be to have equality, but hey, they're on the go. What's in the pipeline is women's wrestling, just, regular wrestling, hockey. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, probably some other things I'm not really thinking about. I mean, I think of UFC, right? So fighting, MMA. And these are I'm going to say the harder hitting sports, right? When you think of hockey, you've got a hockey stick in your head and a plate in your head because you've been hit. Certainly you're all beat up if you are in MMA of some kind, right? That's a pretty aggressive sport. And then wrestling. Oh, and then women's football, right? That was the other one I was going to say, like women's sort of semi-pro type football. These are all super male dominated sports that are in the pipeline. I'm super proud of Nebraska for being ahead of the game on the wrestling side. But we were talking about when did women start competing in combat sports like UFC and WWE, both, very traditionally male. And what did we decide, Jake? What was that?
So the NCAA is officially going to make women's wrestling a sport this year.
Nice.
So we're seeing that progress there. Like you said, UFC was like 2013, and then WWE is interesting, or professional wrestling is that it used to be, more of what does a woman look like, right? A lot of times she was coming down to the ring to speak for somebody. I mean, it was bad. They would do bra and panties matching, mud wrestling, the worst that you can think of. And then around like 2013, there started to be a shift now, and it was called the Women's Revolution. And it's cool to watch because even at the beginning, and I went through it too. It's no fault of my own, I suppose. I didn't have any control of what was going on. But at first you kind of think, hey, this is pretty good for women's wrestling, or this is good for a women's wrestler. And then over the years, now I watch wrestling matches. It doesn't even come to my mind. It's like, this is good wrestling. Right. Or, you can still be critical. Maybe this doesn't work for some reason. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's just come such a long way.
Yeah. And the women's, certainly, I love watching women fight in UFC. I love UFC. That's my hidden fabulous sport for anybody listening who doesn't know that about me. I love UFC, but I was a bodybuilder, and I just, it's all sort of related. The elite athleticism and training required to fight in the UFC is unbelievable. And when I look at the women, they are just as good as the men, right? And they're just as aggressive as the men. And, I love that. I don't know why I love that. I think it's, I'm not on the soft side of women, I guess. So I like these sports because it's challenging the paradigm that you were talking about, Aniko, right? And it's just to say there are women that are tougher, there are women that are softer, there are men that are tougher, there are men that are softer, but you have these paradigms that are systemic over thousands of years that these sports are helping to break. And I love that. How about you?
Absolutely. My cousin Alexa Connors fights in MMA, and the things that she's been able to channel, whether it be home life or different things going on just day to day, she puts so much into it that people don't even realize like what she's battling for on behalf. And she started a nonprofit herself for mental health. So I think, like we said, there's just more positives than negatives. And circling back to WWE, I loved China growing up. Just seeing her body and strength, like I was like, oh, I can do that. Like that's an option. That's a beautiful thing. And I remember the shift with the Bella twins coming in, and I remember they had like a reality show, and at first the focus was the relationship, but then like Jake said, essentially it just got to them being really great wrestlers and a really great brand. So why not do both?
Right. Why not? Okay. Well, let's take a break. That's a fun little segment there where we're talking about how women's sports are changing. When we'll come back, we'll kind of do a little wrap up for the year, and then we're done. So this is Walk the Herd with Aniko and Rebecca. We'll be right back.
Winter is just around the corner. Is your vehicle ready? Don't get left out in the cold. At A1 Automotive, we prep your car for whatever winter throws your way here in Nebraska. For battery checks, brake inspections, tires, heaters, whatever your car needs to keep you and your family safe on the road, we've got you covered. A1 Automotive, always honest answers.
In a world where Wi-Fi battles rage and bandwidth is never enough, one family dares to connect it all. Work from home, influence all day, stream all night, and game to win. Deadlines, downloads, and dance-offs, all happening under one roof, flawlessly. Can your internet provider do that? Fiber fuel your household at allofiber.com/all-in.
Mike, I've been thinking our house could really use a makeover. How about new siding?
I've been thinking the same thing. Have you heard of James Hardy?
Yes. Sarah down the street had Roofing Service Company install James Hardy siding on their home, and they love it.
Roofing Service Company does have great reviews.
They took her through the design process and made everything super easy.
Roofing Service Company offers expert design and installation. Couple that with James Hardy's durable products and variety of colors, you and your family will love your exterior remodel. Just visit roofingservicecompany.com. That's roofingservicecompany.com.
Hey there, this is Paul Scheel, owner of High Electric. I want to thank our friends and loyal customers and introduce High Electric to those looking for a new electrician. We've been serving the Lincoln and Omaha area for over 30 years, from design to install, upgrades, and repair. If you are a homeowner or a small business needing some electrical work, call us at 402-466-6606 or check us out at hyelectric.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Big value and big flavor meet at Wings and Rings thanks to the all-new delicious Duo Combo. This is the one you've been waiting for. Get one half-sized appetizer and 2 entrees with a side for only $19.99. Bring a friend for the best deal in town on any day of the week, during game time, or whenever the heck you want. Their made-to-order wings and chicken sandwiches are waiting for you at their 68th and O and 40th and Old Cheney locations. Stop by Wings and Rings and celebrate every day with the best meal deal in town.
Rick Heyman here from Sauter Heyman Jewelers. I want to personally thank our great customers for voting us once again the best of Lincoln. At the same time, we're celebrating our 120th year in business in the great state of Nebraska. You can count on Sauter Heyman for the very best quality, value, and customer service. When it comes to your jewelry needs, visit us at South Point, Grand Island, and the Outlet in downtown Lincoln. Visit us today at sauterheyman.com, and thank you for your continued trust after all these years.
It's basketball season, and Salt Mine City is your pregame and postgame headquarters in the Haymarket for craft beers and great food. Get ready for the game with their big, fatty 7-ounce hamburger or try a Reuben sandwich served on Blackstone rye bread. And don't forget their beef or chicken nachos with guacamole, sour cream, jalapenos, and more. Wash it down with one of their 12 beers on tap, including the popular Single Axle Light American Lager. Salt Mine City, your basketball headquarters, now open at 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 11 a.m. Friday through Sunday at 8th and R.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
Welcome back to Walk the Herd. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're talking about women's sports and women in sports, kind of a year-end wrap-up and going into 2026. Lots of cool things to talk about. And, yeah, lots of hopefully unheard perspectives or things that are letting you think about the impact of women's sports even more than you might have imagined prior to joining us today. What's on your mind as we go into 2026, Aniko?
Interesting you'd ask. I saw over the break a movie called Eternity. I believe it's a remake of From Here to Eternity.
Oh.
And spoiler alert, the people in the afterlife are the age of when they were the happiest while they were living. And I kind of was thinking like, well, when was that? And it's not now. So my thought going into the new year was,
okay,
how do I get more of that? How do I get back to more life, more experiences, more stepping out of the box? Because I want any age that I'm at to be like, I'm really happy, and look back in 5 years and go, I was really happy. So I'm focusing this year on really pushing myself out of this box. It's very easy to do in a rural community to just kind of mistake. I have freedom for loneliness. Like, I think I flipped the two. So just getting out of the box more and experiencing more life, why not now?
Why not? Right.
What about you?
Well, beginning of last year, you didn't know that you'd be doing a radio show with me.
Right? Exactly. It was on It's one of the things I ate grapes for under the table on New Year's Eve. So.
Yeah, 2026 for me, the station, I'm going to be spending even more time here at the station, hopefully not to the chagrin of the people that work here. Doing more of this, right? I'm loving this show. We started Walk the Herd, I think, in October. I'm loving the concept. We have so many. Oh, was it August?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we've been doing it that long? Mm-hmm. Wow, cool. Okay, well, we hope that we're bringing something new and unique to the listeners on a Sunday night. We try to mix in sports, but you guys know we do a lot of community things here. But I want to continue to evolve the ticket to doing more and more and having more impact. When you think about just what this show's about, the unheard perspectives, some of the people we have coming up. So we've got some very interesting people coming on in the next few weeks, actually, who have unique backgrounds and experiences, and bringing to the listeners just somebody you might not have met on the street. Small town, everybody knows everybody, and you're in Southern Maryland in a smallish town, and you go outside and you see people, you go to the restaurant, you see people that you know, right? But we don't really know anybody's story, right? Unless you're friends with them, you don't really know the stories. And so I think for the show, I'm excited for what you and I cook up every week to bring something new to the airwaves that people won't have been thinking about.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, we always have something to look forward to on a Sunday night. And, I'm really proud of what we're doing here at the Ticket with the women. All of the women that we have doing shows here, I think, have some kind of a sporting background, almost all of them. So we have Emma Spence, Olympic gymnast, Canadian, with her show. We have Ashley Mitchell, who was on the cheer squad. Here, Kaylee Danker plays basketball at Bellevue. We have all the bowlers, and Kayla and Jillian and Desiree and Alexis, and I'm probably forgetting somebody. Sorry, guys. 2 bowling shows. What else we got, Jake? Who am I forgetting on the nights and weekends?
I was going through, trying to go up and down the line.
Lineup.
Get everybody, yeah.
Maybe I've got them all. And oh no, we have Arden Luckenheim. Yes. Right, yep. So Arden, who's a golf pro already, right? Really, she's playing on the golf team, the Huskers, but she's also an up and coming media talent. She was actually calling the Big Ten game in Vegas for the university. So Arden has a couple of shows with us. One, Big Red Birdies, if you're a golf fan, and one, just the life of Arden, which is fascinating. And I don't know if I got it covered, but we're thrilled at the 2025 year for the Huskers and for all the sports teams, male and female. Excited for what's happening in women's sports on a worldwide basis, whether it's softball or volleyball or basketball or any of the up and coming sports. Look for NCAA women's wrestling. That's what I learned tonight. Thank you, Jake, for sharing that with us. Any last words, Aniko, before we sign off?
Just shout out to the viewers. We appreciate you. It's so fun, and we can't wait to bring you more hidden perspectives.
We'll be back next week. This is Aniko and Rebecca on Walk the Herd. Alrighty.